9 o'clock on March 19th. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Glad to see you all here. Please join me in a flag salute, 9:30, and a moment of silence following that. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father God, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we get started, there is a special person in the audience, former county commissioner, former county clerk, longtime county employee, Bev Owen.
Welcome, Commissioner Owen. It's an honor to have you here today. So, first up on our agenda, 3A, presented by County Council, who is not here today, but we do have council online. I'll just go ahead and present this. Thank you for joining us, Audrey. This is a public hearing set for the purpose of revising Article 4, Division 7 of the Coos County Code, Ordinance 24-02-002L, which would amend those sections of the Coos County Code governing the legalization of roads. The process under ORS 368.201 to 368.221 refers only to the legalization of county roads or roads maintained by the county. The proposed revision would authorize Coos County to legalize local access roads where otherwise appropriate under ORS 368.201 to 368.221. So I will go ahead and make a motion that we read Ordinance 24-02-002L by title, that we take public comment on the ordinance if there is any, and that we adopt Ordinance 24-02-002L, amending Article 4, Division 7 of the Coos County Code.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Well,
Are there any comments?
I don't know that we can adopt it before we read it and take public comments. So
But
I
he's
think we ought to
He just
change
made the motion to
just
do
go
it
ahead
first.
and do the two
Right,
the
so
two first steps and then
It's okay.
and then
we can do the passage as a separate motion. That's fine.
well, can we withdraw the motion and read the ordinance and take public comment and then go ahead with the adoption?
I will withdraw my motion and make a new motion to read the ordinance by title and to take public comment on the ordinance prior to a
Then we
passage
can-
motion.
right,
Do I have a
perfect.
second on that?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Conversation.
No.
Do you have anything, Commissioner?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
No. Any public comment? Let me read the ordinance by title. In the matter of amending Coos County Code Article 4, Division 7, legalization of road, Ordinance 24-02-002L. That's the title. I did see a hand out there.
There's two of them. Sharon.
Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sharon Waterman from Bandon. I just wanted to make a couple comments concerning this. I attended the last hearing, and the purpose of this is the proposed revision would authorize Coos County to legalize local access roads where otherwise appropriate through ORS 368-201-221. So what we had said at the meeting, the hearing last time, was that this only addressed one road. But that's not what this process is doing. This process is changing the code. It's not addressing Road A or Road B. It's changing the code for all county roads. So in that aspect, fact, you had in your documents that the board desires to amend Coos County Code to establish the other public roads in Coos County may be subject to 368-201 through 221. So specifically talking about local access roads. So many of us have these. We have private roads that are used by the public. So then when you go into your paperwork, you have the revisions under Exhibit A. So when you make these changes to meet state, this follows along with what is state ORS says. You are making the whole process change, which you're to do surveys, you're to determine widths of the roads, you're to, there's a process for damages from the landowner, there's a process where you can acquire the roads, and whether it's going through eminent domain, acquisition, and all of this stuff. So I guess my point to you is, I hope you understand what this does, and it's not just for a road in Allegheny. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very
Sharon.
good, thank you, Sharon. I would just follow up with Sharon's comments and say that the process is somewhat arduous, and so that in and of itself is something of a preclusion to more instances of this being implemented or applied. Any other comments in the room? Yes, Phil. It's always good to hear my fan club out there.
Hi, Phil.
Hi. Good morning to the board. Bill Thompson, Coos Bay. I would just like to have a copy of what all of this says. I haven't been able to make the meeting, so where can I get a copy of what you've changed?
Yeah, mine.
Thank you, Bob. That's it for me.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion as it stands?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do I have another motion related to this topic?
Well, I wasn't clear about what we just did, but
Well,
if
we-
we need a motion to adopt the ordinance, that's what I'll do.
Good, that's
I
what we
move
need.
We adopt ordinance 2402-002L, amending Article 4, Division 7 of the Coos County Code.
A second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you. Agenda item 4A. Wait a minute. How do we get to 4A? Oh, here we go. That's why. I get it.
Yeah.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Mr. Rowley, how are you today?
Good, and yourself?
Very well, thank you. Zoom subscription renewal.
Yes, so I am asking for spending authority for our annual renewal of our Zoom subscription.
Mr. Chair, move to approve spending authority of $13,943.20 for the Zoom subscription for Coos Health and Wellness.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Nope.
No? Any discussion in the room? I do have a question, Mike, and that is, I have concerns about Zoom and its ownership and the data that's stored and how that might be utilized. Have you analyzed other platforms to be able to utilize as an alternative to Zoom?
Yes, we have looked at our Echo Vantage, which is our EHR software that has a similar type of device, or capability, but that is only for sessions, and we use Zooms for meetings as well.
Uh-huh.
But I guess the closest other one would be Microsoft, and we haven't actually gone to
Okay, so here we have elected to use GoToMeeting Are there limitations that GoTo has that would preclude your use of that?
I'm not 100% sure if there is or not. GoToMeeting, we use Zoom as a messenger as well. So we also use it for our panic buttons, like if something were to happen, we send out blasts. I'm not familiar with GoToMeeting, but I can definitely look at it or ask Harris to review that for us.
What's your drop dead date on this invoice?
Actually, this particular invoice has been reviewed by our IT person.
So the contract's already been signed.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was an accident. I think he clicked on the button, but they would not roll it back.
Yeah, we
We
tried.
asked them to roll it back.
Okay. So it turns out clicks matter.
Yes. Very much.
All right.
Usually that's an absolute no-no.
Oh, I know, sir. That's why I talked to Colton and
Don't come,
everything about
don't come for approval after the fact.
No,
Yeah. So, well, I mean, regardless of that, on the substance of the questions that I asked, it sounds like this product is firmly ensconced in your organization, and
that and Echo Vantage at this point,
mhm.
they are. But we have discussed with Darius Office 365, and I don't know if that add to GoToMeeting or not.
Well, I can add, GoToMeeting does not have the messaging feature
Right.
that they rely on very heavily to do inter-office communications.
Right.
So that feature, they would not get. Microsoft it does have that feature. We're looking at that. That's a subscription. We need to figure out how, Mike and I have had some discussions. Currently, the county and Coos Health and Wellness are merged into a single system. We have some concerns with the sheriff's office and data security going over to an option of the Office 365. Coos Health and Wellness doesn't have some of those same concerns. So we have talked about this, but we weren't able to come to a resolution before this contract was
Okay.
was to be renewed.
So, in the hopes that no buttons get erroneously pushed next year when this comes due again, I'd really like to have some analysis and make sure that we don't have a U.S. or otherwise, other than CCP-owned product available for our use. Okay, any other discussion? Yes? No? Was that a hand up?
I think it's waving.
Okay. All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Next up, Public Works requesting BOC approval to replace the metal roof on the household hazardous waste building. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Hi, Paul.
So the HHW building was built in 1999. The roof has met its life. We've had to repair it once already, and it's got some other holes in it right now that either need to be repaired, but we prefer to just replace the roof rather than continue to do patchwork.
Okay.
Requested approved signed contract with MGO Roofing and Lawn Care. They were their only responder. We tried reaching out to 7.
I move that
Okay.
we approve and sign a contract with MGO Roofing and Lawn Care LLC to replace our metal roof on our household hazardous waste building at the Beaver Hill disposal site. The cost not to exceed $10,210. Incidentally, this will come out of, for those here, solid waste funds. They're a self-supported county department.
And specifically out of the HHW funding.
Thank you.
Okay, now?
Second?
Yeah.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion?
I should note that they requested 5 different bids and only 1 responded. Must be good times out there.
I'll just note that roofing and lawn care is an interesting mix. Haven't seen that before. All right, any other discussion? Any discussion in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Paul. Oh, nope, you're not done. 4C, requesting BOC approval to dispose of surplus property, 2016 908M cat loader.
Yeah, this loader's got about 3,500 hours on it. It's starting to see higher levels of maintenance. We have already replaced it with a Volvo loader
Right.
earlier in the year that the board approved, so we just want to surplus this one.
Okay, have a motion?
Move to approve and dispose of surplus property 2016 908M cat loader.
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion in the room. If you're looking for a loader, keep your eyes on public surplus and the shipping costs will be minimal because it's right here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
His late agenda item too.
Sorry?
He has a late agenda item.
He has a
too.
late, all right, let's flip over to that.
Would be 6, whoops, there. 6B.
We did that one.
All right, moving to late agenda item 6B, requesting BOC approval to repair our cat grader not to exceed $35,000 and authorize department head to sign estimate number 2126796.
We reached out to 3 different companies to see who would be willing and what the cost would be for transmission rebuild on our grader after Caterpillar diagnosed that it needed a rebuild. This is our older grader, but still worth a lot of money, still has a lot of good life left in it. So it's well worth rebuilding the transmission.
Okay.
They had quoted us $836.41. So we're requesting a not to exceed of $35,000 in case there's some minor little changes, some O-rings or seals or something that comes up
Okay,
during the rebuild.
all right. A motion.
I move approving repairing our cat grader in an amount not to exceed $35,000 and authorize the department head to sign estimate number 2126796.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Any discussion in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Have a great day. Forestry is up next, agenda item 4D. CFPA admin fee invoice.
Morning,
Good
Cole.
morning, Cole. How are you?
Good. Just requesting approval to pay our admin yearly fee for CFPA. It's actually spread across 4 different departments. $13,787.71.
Okay,
Move to approve AR 167957 on invoice in the amount of $13,787.71 for CFPA administrative fee.
I second that.
motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion in the room? All right, seeing none, all in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Cole.
Thanks, Cole.
4E, payment of Coos County Sheriff's Office fuel bill. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is just the normal monthly fuel bill, since it exceeds my spending authority, so just asking the board to approve spending authority not to exceed $20,000 in order to pay our fuel bill for the month of February. We did get it in yesterday afternoon. We weren't able to include the amount on the agenda. It's $13,175.35 to be exact.
Okay. Lower bill this month.
Yes,
Good.
thankfully.
Mr. Chair, move to approve spending authority not to exceed $20,000 in order to pay the Sheriff's Office fuel bill for the month of February.
I second that. And this will be taken out of another expense item that you had some money in,
Yes.
and not increasing your total budget, I
Oh,
understand.
no, definitely
Yeah.
not an increase.
Yeah.
Actually, it's lower than
I'm just,
anticipated.
yeah, I just want to make sure everyone here understood that
Okay.
as well. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? In the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Have a wonderful day. 4F, approval of Kids Hope Center contract and Coos County for Victims Services through the Justice Reinvestment Program. Mike is on his way up right now. All right, so let's just skip past that until he gets here and take up 4G. Order adopting official road name of Trail Lane with the Planning Department. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning. So what you have before you is in the matter of an adoption of an official road name, Trail Lane. It's located off of Anderson Lane, east of the city of Coos Bay. It's order number 24-03-012PL. Road names are assigned when they serve 3 or more lots.
I move we adopt an official name of a road, Trail Lane, located off Anderson Road, east of the city of Coos Bay, via order number 24-03-012PL.
A second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the board?
No.
Any discussion in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
No?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. All right, let's keep skipping as Mike is not here yet. To 4H, State Courts contract for mediation services with Sarah Mello. And counsel is the contact person on this. This is pretty straightforward. State Courts contract with Sarah Mello to provide court-connected domestic mediation services, and meets with council and treasurer approval. Do we have a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the state court's contract with Sarah Mello to provide court-connected domestic mediation services and sign the contract.
I second that.
Any discussion on the board?
Does Audrey have any comments that she'd like to add?
Any comments on?
No comments.
No. All right, thank you. All right, no discussion on the board. Any in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And let's keep moving to 4I. A recommendation for the South Slough representative. Commissioner Sweet.
Yes, typically the South Slough, what's the full title of that, Bob? It's,
South Slough Natural Estuarine Research Reserve.
has on their board a representative from the county. I have done that recently, and due to time have asked to be replaced, and heaven knows why, but the South Slough and their administrator and even the state land board director have asked that we name Lance Morgan. And I say that tongue in cheek. He's works with them day in and day out, knows what they do, they know him. I think he'll do a great job. So with that, I move we recommend Lance Morgan to be the county's representative on the South Slough Board of Directors.
A second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the board?
Lance is our county forester, for those of you who don't know, and the South Slough and Reserve and our county forest have a long common boundary line. So we work with them very closely.
We affectionately refer to him as Master Forester Lance Morgan, who might be suffering from a little jet lag yet today, I don't know. Anyway, okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any in the room?
Well, Mr. Chair, I might add that if people don't know, we have a 17,500 acre county forest. You all. And you may not know this, but 4 people operate the entire forest, including Mr. Morgan, who's the head of the county forestry department. They bring in, depending on the market year, anywhere from 3 to 6 million on a rotated basis for timber receipts, which supplements our general fund, which, as you know, we are having troubles with our general fund coming up. We have a levy coming up in May because the federal timber receipts have run out and we get no more.
While we're talking about our county forest, I might add, and I get lots of questions about why are you over-harvesting the county forest. And the simple answer is that we are not. The problem is the land, we have a rotation. It's a 44-year rotation. If you divide 17,500 acres, or take away from the 17,500 acres, the 12% that can't be harvested due to state regulations pertaining to riparian boundaries and steep slopes, that leaves us somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,500 acres. We sell cutting rights to 350 acres a year. If you divide that 350 into whatever that 15,500 plus or minus number accurate really is, you come up with a 44-year rotation. That doesn't mean that every time we sell a parcel of land, it's 44 years old, but it is generally somewhere between 40 and 50 years old. The timber doesn't all grow at the same pace. The buyers of those contracts have 3 years in which to log the land. Sometimes for market reasons or whatever, a particular buyer may not log much 1 year, but he makes up for it in the second or third year. As I said earlier, really because in times past our foresters and our board tried to avoid logging where it was openly visible to the public. But we're down to the point where we don't have any land that's not openly visible to the public left to be harvested. So you're seeing a lot of harvest along Highway 101 between Coos Bay and Bandon, but I can assure you it's on a 350 acre per year sustained yield harvest plan. Thank you.
So I might add, on the ONC forest, of 2+ million acres, we used to get 5.9% of 50% of the harvest on that 2+ million acres of forest land. It was supposed to be for the Western Oregon counties. In the mid-'80s, we received of the 5.9 of the 50%, in today's dollars, $25 million for general fund purposes. This coming year, for the budget year of 24-25, we get 0. Now, we've been going through the federal courts, we, the Western Oregon counties, for the last 6 years, and we are now this Friday going to be at the U.S. Supreme Court to ask them to take our case on to have the federal government adhere to the 1937 ONC Act and bring back some receipts to the counties. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the agenda item. Is there any other discussion, in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
No.
Aye.
Congratulations, Lance. I know he'll represent us well
Michael
in that
here yet?
regard. Okay, I still don't see the community corrections director here, so we'll just keep going through these. Next up, we'll take 4J, appraisal for the Harris Building property, tax lot ID 28S 13W01ACTL 1010000. Since acquiring the Harris Building down the street here on Adams Street, it's become apparent to us that selling the property may actually be the most economically prudent course. We need an appraisal on the property to establish a correct selling price and facilitate advertising the property for sale and subsequent purchase negotiation. Do I have a motion?
I move we authorize the Coos County land agent to procure appraisal services to establish value on TLID number 28S13W01ACTL1010000 with a cost not to exceed $4,000.
A second.
Any discussion? I'll just, I'll mention that the building in question was graciously offered at a good price to the county by a county employee whose husband ran his business there. And they had actually had discussions about what to do with the building as well, recognizing that there were some structural issues that might be expensive to deal with. And subsequently, obviously, here we are now. So any other discussion in the room? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do we have Director Krim yet? Okay, moving on to 4K. I'll take this one as well. This is the Board of Commissioners Salary Cut Directive. The county faces significant shortfalls in fiscal year 2024 and 2025. All departments have been requested to present budgets with 15% reductions. And by way of note, that's in case the levy does not pass. The commissioners' salaries are determined by the compensation committee and not by that doesn't make any sense. Not by direction to the business manager, as with the rest of the BOC budget. Therefore, the BOC must request that the compensation committee executes a salary reduction for the board. We don't decide our own salaries. We have no say over it. The compensation committee does that. And I am recommending that they execute a 20% salary reduction for the Board of Commissioners in order to help facilitate liquidity of the budget and balancing the budget, and set the right example. Can I have a motion?
I'm not going to move to approve this, nor will
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, all right. Then,
Mr. Chair, if I might, never in the history that I've been here have we ever got involved with the compensation committee, which by state statute, this compensation committee sets all of the elected officials' salaries except for the district attorney who's paid by the state. I think I would rather have no pressure on the compensation committee at all, which we've never had before, in that they will do what they're going to do no matter what we say.
okay. Well, that didn't sound very much like a motion.
No. Just explaining how it works, and it's never been done that way, and we've never, quote, I don't want to use interfered, but never suggested to the compensation committee on what path they should take.
Right, so I'll just mention that it seems to me that protocol is established in order to avoid the appearance of impropriety, as it would be improper for the Board of Commissioners to recommend a salary increase for themselves. However, this is the opposite of that. And it seems to me that it is therefore an inverse moral imperative for us to make this recommendation to the compensation committee, and anyone who wants to take up ethical charges against me on that basis, bring it. Bring it. I'll see you in court. So I think that what we're doing really here is setting the right moral and ethical example by requesting this salary cut for ourselves, being cognizant of the fiscal challenges that the county is up against. And so I think it's time for us to put on our big boy pants, step up to the plate, and vote for this recommendation to the compensation committee.
I simply disagree.
Okay, that's quite an argument.
If you want an argument, I'll make it.
Well, please do.
But we don't even have a motion here to discuss.
Yeah, we don't have a motion, so, I will put out a motion at the risk that it might just die. I will move that we approve and sign the letter from the BOC to the Compensation Committee requesting a 20% salary reduction for all commissioners effective for fiscal year 24-25.
Like I said before, we should not set a precedence for being involved in the compensation committee.
All right.
Plus or minus, doesn't matter.
Okay, so my agenda item dies for a lack of second. And let it be noted that my effort was to make set the right example in the county. Sure, we can welcome some public comment on this. Absolutely, please come up. Wait, I need you to step up to the microphone, though, please, and introduce yourself by name and where you live. Thank you.
And I live on Cat Elk Road, so I'm Coquille.
Good morning,
I was
Darlene.
wondering, how much do you make?
Yeah, good question. Our salary is $74,000 annually plus benefits.
Of which is about 50% of the county employees make more than commissioners,
Yeah.
of 300 and some people.
I see, okay.
All right. Thank you. Yep.
Susan Kirkendall, Coos Bay.
Morning, Susan.
Thank you guys for being so willing to set that precedent. I have a question. Considering how you feel restricted, and rightly so, because you don't want to get involved in a committee that is going to be setting salary. I think somebody mentioned it once before that it might be possible to establish almost like a GoFundMe, to where you personally could do a GoFundMe for a particular, I know there's a lot of people here for the library. There's a lot of people that are worried about the jail. There are, I don't mean to limit it, but like projects that we feel very in a heart for. Have you considered doing or looking into the possibility of having something like that where it is a GoFundMe for those that have a heart for the library, a GoFundMe for those who have a strong passion for having a good jail system? And it doesn't mean that it would pay salary, but maybe pay other things that come out of that type of general fund. So it's just a question, because it could also be what you guys have a heart for. But I do understand how it can get skewed. It can look like you're favoring one over another, especially you, because you're sitting up there and everybody's got the magnifying glass on your lives and hearts and souls. Sorry about that. But it does seem to be what we do.
Could I
So it's
respond
just
to
a
that?
question.
I thank you. That's very kind. My concern is that I think we should not have a precedent where a particular group or a particular person helps with
the
the
one thing.
compensation package for the Board of Commissioners. It's better that it comes from all of the people of the county.
Well, I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that if there is a GoFundMe, it would be a GoFundMe for the library, so that those who have a heart for it can help with those funds for that. Those who have a heart for a stronger jail system, correction system. And I don't know how that plays out. It's just a question, because
Yeah.
I thought you were asking it in relation to compensation for the Board of Commissioners.
No,
I think,
actually kind of a flip on that.
I think
Or
at
even you
any
as
time,
commissioners.
anyone can donate to the county for whatever cause
So they can
they
right
wish.
now?
They can right now.
Okay,
In fact,
I did
yeah,
not.
in fact, so far this year, we've received $200 in donations.
Yep.
How, can you explain that? Can you explain how that functions, so that those of us who do have that heart, and even you guys do it, I would assume, out of your own pockets, that you have more than once given back to the county from your own, time and labor.
Lots of people donate to the county fair, for
Okay.
example. And I know I do, probably almost as much as Rod's asking that we cut from our salaries, as a matter of fact.
I think that
And,
that,
and so, but there's lots of people that do that.
Yes.
And I'm sure lots of people contribute to local libraries. They don't contribute, to my knowledge, to the county library fund, but to local libraries.
so they can compensate, offset some of the strain on. That's just my question.
Yeah,
Because
I think you can, the treasurer could answer this better, but I think if you wanted to donate to any of the departments in the county, you certainly could. Anyone could.
I think that that's a,
We have a form for that, she says. Wait, but do you have a spreadsheet for that?
where is that form? Is that form on the website?
Okay, we'll come up with that answer.
We'll have it on our
and
table
render
every
it back.
meeting from now on.
Bill Thompson, Coos Bay, I commend you on what you're doing, Rod.
Thank you, Phil.
Bob.
What I tried to do.
remember some years back that you was the chairman, it's been a few years back. You froze the non-union employees' raises,
I didn't do that by myself.
but you was the chairman.
Doesn't matter.
Well, you made the, you was,
You know that, Phil.
you could have done the same thing he done.
And we had we had a similar discussion last week when I told you, since I've been commissioner, 9 out of the 16 years, the compensation committee awarded 0 for the commissioners and the other elected officials. That totaled 23% over those 16 years. And I told you that Social Security got 42+% of that same time period.
But the wages were much smaller on the, Social Security recipients than it was you. When you took office, you
In
you
fact-
had to be making $60-some thousand.
No, it was 50-something.
Okay,
But, even fact, since then, we have lost, just from 2009 to now, about $12,000 or $13,000 less in buying power than when I started.
well,
okay.
So is everybody else on Social Security. They've lost a lot more than that. I
Actually
didn't
not,
come
Phil.
here-
It was
I mean, I
kept
didn't
up.
step up here to argue.
You're
Since I made-
incorrect.
Since I made the comment about the transparency is what I'm talking about. The person asked you, or asked the board, how you got paid. They said the budget committee. And a few more answers
Well,
like that.
actually, all the citizens of the county pay us.
Please let me finish.
Go ahead.
All right.
You have a lot of inaccuracies.
No, I don't, because I made some phone calls myself, so I know that I'm right. This particular instance, you say there's, the commissioners, don't say anything to the compensation committee. Now, I know instances where they have. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and call names or nothing, but there's people in this room besides me that knows that, Bob.
I have never, ever talked to
I didn't
compensation
say you
committee.
did it.
Never.
Did I ever say you said
You're
it?
talking to me, though.
Well, you was the one that was talking to me. I was talking to Rod. So there is some
No,
inconsistency.
Phil, back up. You said Bob a while back
Said Bob what?
when you were talking to me.
Yeah, that's when
Yes.
we was talking. You-
Okay,
I
correct.
said that you took the steps, that you froze the wages when you were chairman of the non-union employees, and you guys took a raise too. I thought you did right at that time. A lot of people didn't. I
So-
think
well,
he's
So
doing
you
right.
were talking to me.
Yes, I'm talking to you now, Rob.
Okay, Phil.
But anyway, I'm not sitting here and going, calling names and stuff, but there are people here that knows that they have been commissioners told the compensation committee, we need such and such amount of raise. And I thank you.
Thank you for your time, Phil.
Thank
And
you.
I will note as follow-up to that, that this moment right now clarifies that just because the chair wants to do something doesn't mean it happens, because you can't do it by yourself. All right, so this agenda item is going to die for a, hey, Chris?
I had a comment. Can you hear me?
We'll monitor that. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, Chris Castleman. I had a question for Bob. You kind of beat around the bush, and I know that's a grand excuse to say that you don't want to influence the compensation committee, but regardless of influencing them, would you be in support of a pay cut?
No,
No. So just to clarify, Bob.
just a straight answer, no.
I appreciate your straight
And
answer.
not beating around the bush on the other part either, because I don't want to influence them.
Sure, but, okay. You're very argumentative today. I like
No,
that.
no,
it's
just
good, it's
stating
good.
facts.
Sometimes you're asleep, and I like you being awake.
I'm never asleep.
So anyways, it's striking to me, and I appreciate Rod making this motion.
Oh, you should also state you're running for commissioner in my position.
Okay, so Bob wants me to let you all know that I'm running for commissioner.
No, you talk to us.
He doesn't want people to talk to him, but he does.
Yeah,
Okay.
you address us always.
Okay, so I'm addressing Bob Main,
Yeah,
who I am running for your seat for county commissioner.
correct.
Which makes it important that I'm up here talking because I have skin in the game. I support a pay cut for the commissioners.
Okay.
I support that because I sat through 3 days, 2 in person, 1, I listened to the recording that Bobby sent me. I sat through 3 days of the preliminary budget hearings, where you asked every department in the general fund to produce a proposed budget with a 15% pay cut. That 15% pay cut decimated our county. It's a proposal, but if the levy does not pass, that is what will happen. It will decimate our county. I can go through, I have a whole list here of positions that would be cut. The clerk's office would lose an elections position. Bobby would lose a day from her pay. She'd go from 5 days to 4 days. The treasurer would get a $100,000 pay cut. Legal would lose a risk management position. The surveyor would lose a field surveyor. Criminal division of the sheriff's department would lose 7.5 full-time employees. The jail would lose 10 positions. The DA would lose a medical examiner. I could go on and on. But you won't take a pay cut.
But that's not what happened in the budget committee.
The only budget,
Did you hear me?
the only department that did not propose a budget cut beyond Bobby losing one of her 5 days of salary was your department.
But
Every other department
that's not what
proposed a
happened
pay
in,
cut.
that's not what
and you
happened in the
can't
budget
do it.
committee.
And I know both you and John have other sources of revenue. You're not struggling.
That's
It's
not what
pathetic.
happened in the budget
It's
committee.
pathetic. And that's part of why I'm running for commissioner, because the mentality up here is wrong.
You're inaccurate, because that's
It's
not what
wrong.
was passed in the budget committee, and you were here.
Not everything you guys vote on is a matter of right and wrong, but this is wrong.
You were here for 3 days, and that's not what happened.
Okay,
None of that happened.
any other, please?
I was just curious what the savings would be.
What?
Joe Rolfe. I was just curious what the savings would actually be. Do you know that?
I don't remember exactly what that number is.
Well,
It's-
14 something
It's pretty,
piece.
it's pretty easy. Yeah, it's about $48,000, something like
It would
that.
be a little bit more than that, because there'd also be a little savings in other benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
It might be north of 50. It's not huge, but frankly, for the benefit of the room, to be perfectly honest, in the Board of Commissioners budget, there simply isn't anything to cut. There is nothing there that can possibly be cut. There isn't anything, except for Bobby's salary and our salary. That's it. So, and
And I think that's probably true of almost all of our budgets, correct?
Yeah,
It is, yep, it is. I mean, it all comes down to that.
like in the county clerk. There's only 4 people plus the clerk there, 2 in elections and 2 in recording. You can't cut those.
Right.
There's nowhere to cut. We've cut over the years and years and years, cut and cut and cut. There's nothing left in the county surveyor. There's 4 total people, 2 field people, the office manager, and the county surveyor. There's nothing there. I mean, you cut a little bit of paper stuff and that sort of thing, but nothing really substantial, because then you're talking about somebody's position, and there's nobody to run that office. Assessor, county treasurer, all down to almost nothing. And if you don't have the assessor, you don't get the recordings from the county clerk. It all works together here, in that then the people don't get to write tax bills of everybody that's traded property of one another. And then, if you don't send out the tax bills, the other 80 taxing districts, cities, fire districts, etc., library, of course, they don't get paid properly.
Yeah, all our departments are linked together.
Yeah. It's down to nothing now. We used to have 2 county councils. We have 1.
Right.
And there was 2 other people in the office. Now there's 1, besides county council.
And this is all the result of, basically, I mean, honestly, this is the theft from Coos County. We are being robbed by the state government and the federal government. And since I've become a commissioner, everything that I see come down the pike from the state and the feds it ranges from neutral to extreme on this point. And if it has any influence at all, it tends toward the extreme, and it is this: the neutering of county authority and local control, and the focusing and centralization of that control in Salem and Washington, D.C. Over and over and over again, I see it sitting in this chair. That's what it's all about.
I suggest we get back on the agenda. I don't think people came here today to hear ideology.
Can I say one thing?
I wish you would, Darius. Always the salient comments.
Mike's here.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll get Julie.
I'm Darius Boudelaire. I'm the IT director / maintenance manager for Coos County. I live in Coos Bay. I just want to set the record straight. The department heads were not directed to submit a 15% salary decrease.
Right.
We were asked to submit our recommended budget and then another budget with a 15% decrease. We were not directed to take it from any line item.
Right.
We did our best, but that whole thing about we were told to do a 15% salary decrease budget is not true.
Yeah. Did somebody say that?
Mr. Castleman did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's absolutely not accurate.
Yeah, no, we submitted 2. Everybody, all the general fund departments submitted 2.
Yeah.
Their regular recommended budget, and then one with an additional 15%
Yeah,
decrease.
that's correct.
One of the budgets, we were able to reduce some services because we felt like we were not able to reduce staff. We just could not provide. Right, so we cut services, recommended cutting services.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Darius. Julie Brecky has her hand up online.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, Julie.
Hi, this is Julie Brecky, County Clerk. I had a couple things I wanted to touch on with this as well. Thank you, Darius, for clarifying that. I would like to say that some departments have absolutely no room to cut other than a position, like in the elections department. I can't cut out anything for elections because they're required. So the only room that we had to cut was from staff. So I understand that we were not asked to cut that, but in some cases that's our only option. I would also like to say that the budget that I proposed and the 15% cut, the one that was temporarily approved was not the one that was cut. So, and I think that happened in all departments. I'm pretty sure that the commissioners understand that we can't be cutting staff. And so I believe that all departments have a temporary approval of the one without the 15% cut. So I just wanted to make that clear. And Bob or John or Rod could verify that for me. The other thing I wanted to say was I do not think that the commissioners should be asking for a pay cut for themselves. And one of the reasons is because when we do that, then we set a precedent saying that their job doesn't have value, and their job is a full-time job. It does have value, and they're not the only ones who are going to hold this position. They may be able to afford to take the 20% cut. I don't know, but in the future, whoever runs for this position may not be able to afford that, and we want to be able to make sure that that not just people of higher wealth can hold this position. We want to make sure that it's a position that's a full-time compensated position, so that we get the best fit for the job, not just someone who maybe already has the means to hold the position. So I think that's important to think about. I don't agree that it's taking a higher moral ground. I think that we need to look at it more as our county's positions across the state are already one of the lowest paid if you look at averages across the state. And these jobs are important. They hold value. The commissioners' jobs are hardworking jobs, and we should be compensating them. So I think that that's really important for us to think about in this conversation.
Thank you, Julie. I'll confirm that the budget directive that was handed down to the directors was for a 15% or present their budget as it is, and then also a 15% reduction proposal. But by law, since we have the levy, the jail levy on the actually it's not jail, the jail, the public safety levy on the ballot, we are legally required to pass our budget as if the levy is going to pass. And then if it does not pass, then we'll have to go back and revise to that 15% reduction. So Julie is correct on that. And there you go.
One little other thing, you all know how much the county collects in the general fund to run the general fund, which is sheriff and jail and dispatch and animal control and district attorney and assessor and county clerk and county surveyor, commissioners, county council, juvenile, I probably forgot a few of them. That we collect, and we collect all the taxes for all the taxing districts. We get to keep a little over $6 million. You know how much it costs to run the jail at its present cost? Just the jail alone, $7.8 million. And then the feds tell us they're not going to reenact the Secure Rural Schools Act, which was a stopgap when they quit cutting on the ONC force. And that's where it's left us.
Yep. So, 30 seconds, make it count.
I apologize, I know a lot of you guys are here for the library stuff, but it's really important. What I said was not false. It's funny to Bob, but
it is inaccurate.
They proposed a budget for a status quo budget based on the levy passing, and those were all the budgets that they approved if the levy passes. That was one instance. If it does not pass, that was why there were 15% budgets presented. Mm-hmm. So thank you for clarifying. I don't understand what part of what I said was a lie or mistaken. That happened. I sat through it for 3 days, so it was a little shocking. Sorry. I just needed to clarify that for people because it's important. Right. I did not lie. There were 15% budgets presented. 15% budget cuts presented.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Any other yes.
Anyway, I was wondering, I work at the mill for a long time. And when I worked there, the insurance used to cover everything that we did. I mean, they paid the whole bill. So is there any chance here that you could cut some of this through an insurance company, change the companies, do anything in that respect?
We tried that.
Chair, this is not a budget committee meeting. That's a nice suggestion, but we need to get back onto the agenda. And yes, we have looked at that.
Okay.
But we did try that. We spent several years trying to get different carriers.
All right. This motion, or this dies for a lack of a second and is
Back to 4F.
gone. Back
Mr.
to
Chair.
4F. Mr. Krim, approval of Kids Hope Center contract in Coos County for victim services through the Justice Reinvestment Program. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
Mike, how are you?
Doing well, sir. Here to ask the board to approve the Kids Hope contract with Coos County for victim services out of the Justice Reinvestment Program. This contract provides a child family advocate for victims at the Kids Hope Center through the Justice Reinvestment Program. Dollar amount will be $22,422.75 from 7/1/23 to 6/30/24. Again, it's funded by the State of Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. Ask the board to approve that amount to be for the Kids Hope Center for $22,422.75 from 7/1/23 to 6/30/24.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Kids Hope Center contract to provide child and family court advocate in the amount of $22,423.75 from July 1 of 23 through June 30 of 24.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. Two things. Number one, everyone should know this, that Coos, what's your department? I was Community Corrections is funded entirely by the state of Oregon based on the savings that they enjoy from not having to put people in prison. Instead, they are referred to a local parole and probation organization. We have a very, very strong organization for parole and probation. None of their money comes out of your local tax dollars. Kids Hope Center. It's run largely by volunteer contributions. It is a place that children who have been abused and neglected can be taken for help and soft questioning for finding out who's been abusing them. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but unfortunately they have about 400 kids a year that are abused or neglected to the point that they need special treatment. And this is the only institution really we have that in the state, in the county, that does that. 400 kids is a lot. I think it's probably more than that now. Another statistic is that typically only 1 out of every 3 abused or neglected children is reported. So we have an epidemic in this county that's really, really hard to stomach. And so if talk about donating, I'll get a tear, but if you want a cause, this is a good one to donate to. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any discussion in the room? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Krim.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent calendar? All in favor?
Aye.
Further late agenda items, 6A, Coos County Library distribution formula.
So, all of you here for the library, can you come every 2 weeks? Because we only have a handful normally. It's great to have participation.
All right, so is Is Stacy or Sammy here to present on this? Ba-
I'm here. My name's Barbara Cathy.
Good morning, Barbara.
I'm the chair of the Coos Library Board. So in 2015, the Coos County Board of Commissioners requested the Coos Library Board review the library distribution formula and recommend changes. We're back. A distribution committee was formed, and after examining many options and with many hours of work by the committee members, the committee devised a distribution formula that uses population served and statistics that are reported annually to the state library by each library. It is intended that the statistics be verifiable, open to public scrutiny, and easily accessed. I know that you got a copy of the report. The distribution committee presented their recommendations to the Coos Library Board at the December 4th, 2023 meeting. The Coos Library Board voted to ask the directors of Coos County Libraries to take the new distribution formula to their various stakeholders, including local library boards. The information was presented to stakeholders in public meetings. At their February 27th, 2004 meeting, the Coos Library Board voted by a unanimous vote of the board members in attendance to recommend the Coos County Commissioners in their role as Coos County Library Service District governing body that the revised distribution formula be approved as presented. The Coos Library Board, and I'm sure you guys understand this too, that when you change how you distribute the money without changing how much money is being distributed, that there are some libraries that are going to take cuts and others that will make gains. Not all stakeholders were happy with this formula, and indeed, Coquille Library stakeholders and Powers Library stakeholders expressed opposition. And on the behalf of the Coos Library Board, I would like to express appreciation to the distribution committee members who often took on the thankless task of creating this new formula. And 3 of them are here today, and they will be able to answer questions should you have them. The distribution committee consisted of Linda Kirk, a citizen, Dora board member, library user, Haley Lagacy, North Bend Library Director, Kathy Larkham Johnston, Coos Library Board member, Carol Bencham, Coos Library Board member. And in addition, I would like to call attention to page 4 of the distribution plan. It's entitled Interruptions of Library Service. I call it the disaster plan. Because in previous years.
I'm not seeing, my page 4 doesn't look like that.
Okay.
Unless there's 2 page 4s. Here's another page 4.
That's the one.
Got it, okay.
That's your page 4.
Previously, we didn't use this kind of a plan. No matter what you got happened to interrupt services in the library, you still got the same distribution. The percentage was the same. If we go with this distribution policy, this new formula that's based on actual service and actual utilization, then a disruption in service could cause consequences that can't be recovered from. It will cause the distribution to be reduced, and then that will affect the next year's distribution. The change in the statistics will affect the next year's distribution. So that plan was put in place to allow the recuperation of those funding if there's a disaster. The roof falls in. You can't operate for a month. How do you recuperate from the not having people in to create those statistics?
Okay.
But that may be very much a new policy. the library directors, I believe, were not sure if that needed to be, if this formula is adopted, if that particular part of it needs to be an addendum to the master plan or something else.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for
Well,
that.
I have some questions for him.
Okay.
Can we have a motion before we start having discussion?
Actually, I've read through it a couple times, and it's really complicated. I would make a motion that we have a work session on this instead, so we can really delve into it. At a board meeting, we, spend 10, 15 minutes on it, and then we're done, but I'd rather delve into this thing because I got some questions about library visits. I get questions about how this particular formula of physical, digital, circulation, return, visits, and public internet stuff, how that formula works, because I don't see it. And then on your spreadsheet, I call it here, I thought maybe I was doing something wrong, so I got a hold of our finance director, et cetera, and some of the numbers don't work out.
Okay.
The formulas are incorrect somehow. So I'm going, how does that work? So needs to be some more work on this, I think, than all of us getting together and talking
I think that all
about it.
the libraries would be grateful if this gets as much consideration because it will affect
Yeah.
everyone.
I got my
Everyone.
calculator out and I was going through that and I go, how is that? No. I do it again. No. Did it a different way? No. So then I called and said, hey, can you look at this? And they go, oh, we had the same answer you did. So
And I'm really not the person to ask about the math parts of it.
I was an analyst in my former years.
So we have a motion to table this for a work session to delve into the subject matter more deeply. Do I have
Was that a
second?
motion? Did you make a motion?
He
Yeah.
did make a
Okay,
motion.
have a
I
work
would second
session.
that motion. I really agree with that. This didn't get to us until rather late, and frankly, yesterday I was off because of medical reasons and didn't really have a chance to study this. So to give it the attention it's due, I think we ought to do that. I would like to ask that when you, like on page 6, you list the distribution percentages. I'd be curious to know what they are now.
Okay.
And also, if you would assume some reasonable total level of funding, whether $4 million a year plus or minus that you get. Show us how that would impact, how that would decrease or
Okay.
decrease that. That would be helpful to me, and a little more time. So I second that again, and look forward to, no, actually I don't, but
Okay, so the motion currently on the floor is to table this issue for a work session, and we will set the date on that. Is there any other discussion on that question, the question of having a work session? David?
Good morning, Commissioner.
Hi,
Good morning, David.
David Jennings, I live here in Coquille. The one thing I want to say, and it's going to be difficult to achieve this, if you look at the report of the distribution committee, there really never in the process was any involvement with the public. There is language that talks about stakeholders, that stakeholders are library people, the boards, friends of the library, city councils, mayors. When the district was put together after a very conflict-ridden and difficult process, I think one of the key components, even though it raised a lot of anxiety among some people, is the fact that we had a great deal of public input on it. And that had to be worked through before you could get a collaborative effort to try to create something that was worthwhile. And if you look at the, excuse me for a minute here. if you look in the first report that's in there, you see sort of a timeline thing. And what's interesting about this is you have different people doing different things, but then when it talks about, you know, that there be a chance for the public to comment, that actually is placed in May of 2024. And obviously, the decision on the formula will probably be made completely by that time. And I don't know exactly how you do this, but this is one of the things that I think is very flawed about this particular process. It involves a lot of people that have an intense interest in the library, but there are a lot of people out in the community that maybe don't follow it that closely, but deserve to have a chance to be heard. And not only was that not done, there really didn't seem to be any interest in trying to get that. Now, I compare that, for instance, with the controversy over the community enhancement plan that, of course, never came to fruition because Jordan Grove didn't locate here. But actually, there was a great deal, many flaws in that proposal initially. But during a lot of intense public meetings, I think especially with the South Coast Community Foundation, that was going to be the educational component, it went from a non-transparent organization that had flaws to one that was actually a pretty good idea. And I think the public can contribute a lot on all political issues or governmental issues, and they should be allowed to be given a chance. They have not been given the chance so far. And I don't know how hard it would be to try to set something up and do this, but I think there's an obligation to try to involve the public in this. Now, how that fits into your timeline for the work session, I don't know, but I think it's a terrible thing that this has gotten this far without that kind of public involvement. And I just ask you to try to get the public involved in it. And I realize this is a contentious issue, but there have been contentious issues before. You know, my wife and I were heavily involved in the formation of the district, and both of us served on the library board countywide afterwards. And I really know that you can have very intense disagreements and then get past them and work out something that works for everybody. But I think the public is an important part of that component. You know, thank you for your time and appreciate your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Okay, so the motion and the second is to conduct a work session on this question to delve further into this. Any other discussion on that point? Seeing, yes, sir. You got in just under the wire there.
Hi, Ralph. My name is Ralph Moore. I was on the first Coos County Library Board. I was vice chairman with Small Fire Hawk being chairman. And I remember that, and I wanted to, the gentleman over there, we had open meetings. In fact, they were quite raucous, and I remember one time that I put my SE30 up here with the spreadsheet that I had put on it. And we went down and figured out how we were gonna figure out who was gonna get what. And this is one of the things that I have to agree with the gentleman that it should be more open. This first time I've heard of this. And I also think that one of the things you should realize is that a lot of county commissioners in Douglas, Jefferson, or Josephine and Jackson counties are very happy, or not happy, because we have a library situation like we have in Coos Bay, in Coos County. We are the envy of the state. So I want to keep this open to everyone, and that we continue the library to support all the libraries that are currently listed on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ralph.
All right. Any other comments on this particular question? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I'll just, as an addendum, comment that now that we have this voted to go to a work session, we'll get that scheduled. And, you know, on a number of other questions that have come up over the last few months here at this dais, there has been no problem with people getting others who are concerned about the issue into the room. And I think that's represented here today as well. As I look at the comments sheet, and nearly every one of them is pertaining to the library. So I'm confident that this process is going to involve ample public comment, which I concur is an important thing for us to incorporate.
So, Mr. Chair, who's ever worked on the formula calculations, if you have, can you get a hold of me or Finance Director Megan Sims to work out what we see as a problem with the formula? And also, if you can get a hold of me as to how the percent of county usage was come up with, because I don't see the formula. I see terms like physical circulation, etc. I don't see the math for the calculation. So if you could get a hold of me, that'd be great.
And
cool. Yeah, thank you.
all right, very good, thank you. And that, we'll get that work session date set and posted up on the calendar within the next couple of days, so that there's plenty of time to get that planned out for everybody who wishes to speak. Next up, late agenda item 6C, property line adjustment deed at the former Bob Baloney Boys Ranch site. This was presented by council. I'll go ahead, we got Cole to present on this. Thank you, Cole.
So just looking to approve the property line adjustment deed at the Davis Slough Bob Baloney Ranch location. That would just incorporate 6 acres from tax lot 500, which is county owned, into tax lot 501. And this just incorporates the water system and a couple other buildings.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Very good.
Move to approve acceptance of property line adjustment deed and authorize chair to sign.
And I second that.
Any discussion on the board?
Nope.
Any
Sorry,
discussion in the room?
You're so long.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can stay after work, Cole, to make up for the time you lost while you were here.
Late agenda item 6D. This is the Coos County Area Transit District letter of support for their new administrative center. CCATD is seeking grant funding sources to build a new admin and maintenance facility, and it needs letters of support for the project. And we have such a letter written here. And so I am moving that the Board of Commissioners signs a letter of support for the CCATD grant applications. Do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are going to move into commissioner reports. And while we do that, I'm going to vacate the chair for just a moment.
Okay.
Here to go.
Last Saturday.
May we please have order in the room? This meeting is not over, folks. Thank you very much.
Commissioner reports, last Saturday attended the Hauser Fire Department annual fundraiser. Lots of fun, lots of door prizes. I didn't win anything, but shucks. But it was really well turned out. I mean, it was packed, so it was good for them. They do a lot of good things besides helping families out there in the Hauser area. And like I said, this Friday, the ONC Association, I'm the vice president for the last umpteen years, 8 years, I think. We represent all of the 18 Western Oregon counties. We are going to the Supreme Court of the United States with our attorneys. I won't be there, of course, but to ask the Supreme Court to take on our case in opposition to the BLM's resource management plan, and to ask them for the federal government to adhere to the 1937 ONC Act, which brings back harvest to the 2+ million acres of ground that was set aside by Congress specifically for the benefit of the counties, and that's why we have the second lowest property tax rate in the state. Rightly so. Back then, commissioners didn't need property tax. They had all this money coming in from the federal timber harvest. So, well, I'm anxiously waiting. We have 26 U.S. senators and representatives signed on as amicus to the court for us. We have all kinds of organizations, and Cattlemen's Association, AFRC, American Forest Resource Council, all kinds of folks signed on as amicus to the court for us also. So hopefully we will get a court case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. It'll make a big difference. Now, will that have money rolling in immediately? Obviously not. It'll take 3 or 4 years at least for timber cruises, layouts, timber sales, actual harvest, to actually see some money coming in. But in the meantime, we're basically short on funds. But if it's, let's say it comes in year 3, I would never ever want to have the levy go forward. We'd do away with the levy and just operate on those funds. I'm done.
Okay. Spent a lot of time the last several weeks, I think, and I reported last board meeting about this. There's a group of timberlands called the County Forest Trust Lands. There's 600,000 acres of such lands in the state. They are managed by the Oregon Department of Forestry. We have just over 7,000 acres in our county. These lands were deeded over from the counties to the state in the early 1940s and the late 1930s. They were owned by the counties because the owners of the land didn't pay taxes on them, so they were foreclosed upon. You have to remember, in those years, they were looking at 80-year plus or minus timber rotations. I don't know if they'd even really thought about that yet, because they were still cutting the old growth, largely the old growth forests in the state. So you put yourself in the shoes of someone whose land had been burned or just recently harvested, and you realize, well, I'm never going to see another harvest from these lands, and likely my children will not either. So they quit paying taxes, and the counties took the lands over, didn't have any money to manage them. The state came up with a great idea. They floated some bonds, and they reforested these 600,000 acres of burned over or largely harvested lands. The idea being that when it came time to harvest those lands, the state would take 1/3 of the harvest proceeds to pay for their cost of reforestation and management. And they would give to the counties the remaining 2/3, and not to county governments alone, but to the counties to distribute to other taxing districts, much as we do your property taxes, the harvest proceeds. And that worked quite well for a long time. And however, in the end, they are public lands, and non-rural part of our citizenship recognize that there are other values besides jobs that they would like to enjoy in those lands. And part of that was recreation, part of that was environmental use, and so the logging was restricted, and it continues to be restricted to the point where only under the most recent harvest plan, only 55% of the land base would be harvested, and there would be a reduction of about a minimum reduction of probably $65 million that would no longer flow to the counties in which these lands are located. This would have significant impact upon the county governments themselves, significant impact on the schools, lessened somewhat by school equalization, which we have, a state program, ports, hospitals that are supported by tax dollars, any rural fire departments would all be impacted by this. And so the plan, it's called a Habitat Conservation Plan, was agreed to by the Oregon Department of Forestry, and so it's going to go forward. We're trying to find some way to lessen the impact upon the taxing districts that they would otherwise suffer if we don't come up with an alternative plan. So I've spent a good deal of time on this. Too early really to talk much about what that plan might look like, because we don't even know ourselves, other than the state appears to be willing to sit down and have a conversation with the counties. So I'm hopeful something will work out, but I'd advise against holding your breaths. But so that's been the big emphasis of upon my time the last several weeks, and it probably will continue so for a few more weeks. That, as well as our public safety levy, which we're proposing for the May ballot. So that, I think I did something more than those two things, but that was that dominated at least my mindset for the last several weeks. Very important issues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Last week we spent a fair bit of time working through the budget, and it was certainly an eye-opening set of conversations that we had. Not really shocking that it was such. That's what we fully expected, and if we are not able to see this, hopefully temporary, if we're not able to see this levy pass, then we are going to be facing some brutal realities in this county. And it's distressing to see that, and it's particularly distressing to me to see the underlying and the backstory causes for this fiscal situation that we find ourselves in. It's not because the county spends money extravagantly. It's because the state has misrepresented and malrepresented the interests of counties vis-a-vis the state forest trust lands. The federal government has maladministered the Coos Bay Wagon Road lands and the ONC lands to the detriment of our revenues. I mean, dramatically. Commissioner Maine has expressed many times the statistic that we used to receive in today's inflation-adjusted dollars, $25 million a year from the ONC lands. And last year we received, I think, a little under 1.3 million. So these are lands that are supposed to be harvested by law, by congressional act in 1937, supposed to be harvested at a minimum of 500 million board feet per year. These are lands that grow at a rate of 1.2 billion board feet every year. And the reality is that the harvest levels are down around 200 million board feet, and it's not enough to fulfill the obligations that were committed to in the ONC Act of 1937. When you factor on top of that the inefficiencies that have developed in the processes that BLM incorporates, the revenue has dropped obviously from 25 to 1. That's quite a cut in funding for us to absorb. And at the same time, the same state has been handing down unfunded mandate after unfunded mandate that requires more and more county employee time to fulfill, with no compensating revenues to cover that time of our employees at the county, who are frankly stretched. We're all stretched, and it's maddening. It's maddening as well to me to see last week the Board of Forestry go ahead and approve despite a cacophony of outcry against it, approved the habitat conservation plan that further restricts the harvest on those state forest trust lands. We are not represented. This county is not represented on the Board of Forestry, and frankly, we're not represented in many other areas as well at the state level or the federal level. And it is maddening to see how the local control of this county has been decimated over the decades to our own detriment. I hope we're able to get it back. I really do. I think there's one way to turn the ship, and in that interest, I continue to wear the red tie until Election Day in November, and let's see how that goes. I was distressed this week. This is not a local issue, but it is, to see the unbelievable gaslighting in the mainstream media over the term bloodbath. You know, I hope nobody in this room fell victim to that, but President Trump spoke of a bloodbath in the auto industry, in the economic sector, and the mainstream media went out with a diatribe of lies for the whole week until they've finally been embarrassed into recanting in a broad way. And it's just one more example of the disinformation and the gaslighting that we're subjected to every day. So, with that having been said, Commissioner Maine?
One other thing you may not know, and I see new faces, thank you, is that this wind energy project you may have heard about is going to go in off the coast by BOM, Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which I'm one of 3 representatives for Oregon on that thing. What you may not know is that in Rhode Island and Virginia, who have offshore wind, the promoters of those projects went to those respective legislatures and they enacted feed-in tariff, like feed to cows, feed-in tariff. And it's also already been discussed twice in the Oregon legislature. Feed-in tariff, for you new folks, is if something goes wrong with a project and the multi-billions of dollars, we, the ratepayers, have to make the investors whole. You may not know that. Imagine that. Imagine with your power bills, and then you're going to get to pay for it twice, because low-income folks won't be able to pay the exorbitant power rates, so we'll have to help them too. So you get to pay for it twice, if it happens.
Just like so many other things. All
Yep.
right. Okay, moving into citizen comments. First on the list, Phil Thompson. Come on down.
Yeah, I haven't been here a while, I gotta get my time in.
It's good to see you again today too, Phil.
Thank
Been a little while.
This wasn't what I was gonna comment on, but since you commented on Mr. Trump, you know, the board sitting there, we're supposed to be nonpartisan.
No, that's not true.
Yes,
It's a
it is.
nonpartisan position, but that doesn't mean that we
Yes.
can't express partisan ideas.
Well,
That's
okay,
poppycock.
then I'll say my thing. Mr. Trump's got about 90-some charges against him,
Oh.
and I don't see Mr. Biden has any charges. I don't. You show me one of them.
All right.
I'm not a Trump fan, and anybody, the way I look at it, that tries to overthrow my government is an enemy to me. That's okay.
Right on.
Okay. What I came up here to say, I got to get my breath.
Take a deep breath.
Well, he's not been convicted of being a sex offender. Anyway, I'm sorry. I had to comment on what you said. But anyway, you know, I've been to all these meetings. The fairground almost was a riot down there. And I've seen similar things here, and really, if you really look at it, for about the last year and a half, your regulations and resolutions have caused a lot of anger to the people. You know what I'm saying? And it's certainly to me, I don't think that you guys passing some of these things, and the ranchers got citations, and Bob told me that be escorted out. And, when you changed the citizen comment that time, I was walking up here, I hadn't even read what was on your deal, and then you was pretty well out of control yourself.
Really?
Yeah, you said not taking no comments except what's on the agenda, which we had been before spoke on anything we wanted to.
If you remember,
and I don't think you could have made me any madder, Bob.
if you remember,
slapped my face.
if you remember correctly,
Huh?
if you remember correctly, I changed that. Not only do you have citizen comments like you're doing now, but all of the public, after the board deliberated on a specific item on the agenda, they all got to voice their opinion about that specific item.
It's true.
So you had two chances.
Well, you know, certainly you did, but when you done it without any other knowledge of the other commissioners. I didn't hear them say anything. You was chairman, so you enforced the rule. I think you went against your own policies more than once, and I think you guys should look back. Every time you start one of these regulations and stuff, let's try to thin it out a little bit where we know what's going on. Just like I said, I think a hearing officer is nothing but similar to a municipal judge. You give one of these guys a citation, I think if they're innocent as could be, to justify those people's existence, a municipal judge. It's my opinion. They had to find you, in order to keep their job, because they got to make their own money, And this is my theory. The other thing about, I think the Portland up there evicted a guy out of a meeting. They wasn't going to let him come back. He went to court. They said he could only be evicted one day. Are you going to send me to the hearing officer?
We're not going to send you anywhere, Phil.
I hope not. Because I'm going to take it laying down.
And this is not Portland.
But the thing is, we should be very transparent on what we do here. And we're not being. John gives one of the best examples on the state forest right now while he's just talking. What it's supposed to have been when it happened and what it was going to be, then somebody changed it right in the middle of the road. We don't get to that. And you guys have done the same thing in here on things it's supposed to be, doesn't happen. You change. So I'm not going to keep everybody sitting here.
All right.
But I sure think you guys need to look at yourself as part of the problem that's really been happening the last year and a half. And that's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Phil. By way of instruction, we'll just mention that in public comments, we want to let everybody have a chance to speak who wants to speak, and due to the voluminous number of people on the list here, I do want to observe the 3-minute time limit formally, so we'll be running that timer. If you are here for a comment and somebody ahead of you has already said basically what you wanted to say, we would appreciate it if you would just come up and say, I agree with that person, and leave it at that. We would appreciate moving this along. Okay, next on the list is Ralph Moore. Is Ralph here?
He's gone.
Ralph is gone. How about John, is it Dietzel? Dietz something, John?
Apparently
No.
gone.
Christine Kingsbury. Hello, Christine.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Christine Kingsbury. I'm the Bandon Library Director. The Coos Library Board has been tasked with the creation of a fair and equitable path for how funding is distributed to libraries. The current formula used to distribute funding was created in the 1980s, 40 years ago. And for over 20 years, the COB has been aware of the need for a new distribution formula. But unfortunately, work started and stopped during that time. After many years, the CLB has now created a new process for fair distribution. The City of Bandon supports the CLB's new allocation formula. The proposed formula is based on usage and population statistics for each library, which is essential in order to create a transparent, replicable, and equitable methodology. Under the proposed formula based on years 2020 to 2022 library statistics, 4 libraries are set to receive an increase in funding and 4 a decrease. However, these changes may fluctuate each year based on individual libraries' usage and population levels. It has taken over 20 years to get here, and it is long overdue. Based on data assessed, the fair thing to do would be to implement proper funding immediately, as struggling libraries have waited years for this to be rectified. Within this proposal, the CLB has chosen to give libraries that have become accustomed to a higher level of funding time to adjust to their new funding with a 4-year transition plan. Due to our current funding level, Bandon Library has only 5 employees, which impacts our services and open hours. We rely on donations to purchase books, and should this process be delayed, we will be addressing the layoff of staff. However, Bandon is the 3rd largest library with the 3rd highest usage in our county, behind Coos Bay and North Bend. Bandon has the highest usage per capita in the county, and under the current formula that has been in place since the 1980s, Bandon receives less funding than Coquille. From the beginning of this process, the City of Bandon has advocated for a fair formula for each library across the board, no matter what the outcome, and that real statistics be used to determine the formula. Extensive research, work, and negotiation has gone into the creation of the proposed formula. And all that was going to be said today. The real question is, do we want to move forward with the CLB's unanimously approved new formula based on real numbers, equitable across the board to all libraries, or do we want to continue with the current method with no clear merit for distribution? It is our hope that we move forward with this plan and that ultimately it brings fairness and unity to our district. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I have a question for her. Did I hear you say you're going to look at the formula each year in the future?
Yeah, so
Because it hasn't been looked at forever.
Right, so it's based, I should probably let Haley speak to this as the one who's done the formula, but it's based on a 3-year rolling average, so it can change
You're gonna
yearly.
look at it every year.
Yeah, I would.
So it means we get to look at it every year. Okay.
Hello, I'm Haley Lagacy. I'm the director of the North Bend Public Library. I'm a member of the Coos Library Board Special Committee on the distribution. And what Christine said is correct. The distribution of funding to libraries will change annually moving forward under the plan and would be based on usage statistics, an average of 3 years from the period 2 years prior. So we do have to have 2 years between the statistical reporting period and the actual application of those statistics in our funding so that we have time to do calculations, reporting, approvals for the budgeting process. But yes, each year the distribution to each individual library would change based on that library's recent usage.
Okay.
I have a
Thank you.
specific question about that usage. Or when you go through the door to go to the library, is the counter on the outside doors?
Each library has an electronic people counter.
Yeah, where's it located though?
In each library, it is a little different. In some libraries, due to the physical structure of the building, it's placed on the outer set of doors. In other libraries, like my own, it's placed on an inner set of doors, and we manually count people who use our meeting facility. So depending on each individual library, the exact placement of that electronic people counter may vary.
Do you know about Coos Bay or Bandon?
I believe the Coos Bay Public Libraries is placed on their inner doors because of the way that the doorway into the lobby.
It's in the lobby.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
so
Christine can answer about
yeah,
Bandon.
in
Bandon, it's
So-
it's the doors into the actual library unit,
Yeah.
and then also on our exterior meeting room door.
So I think I heard, at least in North Bend, you count the people going off to the left, not in the library, but going in the meeting room. Are those counted or are those deducted?
We count both.
Okay, so some libraries don't have a separate meeting room or internal meeting room. So they wouldn't be counted, even if I'm going to save the whales kind of thing at your library, let's say, as an example. I would be counted, but I actually wasn't going to the library itself to do library stuff. So I'm scratching my head as to why those people would be counted.
People who are using the library's meeting facilities that are operated using funding from the library's budget are counted in attendance, and the reasoning for that is based on the cost of operating the meeting room, the staff required
I
to
got
make those
that, but
reservations and those types of things.
It puts some libraries apparently at a disadvantage because they don't have a meeting room.
It could be interpreted that way.
Mhm.
Our facilities are the responsibility of our city, so
Yeah, I
whether a
gotcha.
library space has a meeting room or not is dependent on what's provided to us by our various cities.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Karen Thomas, is it Karen or is it Kate?
There she is.
Kayan?
She's here.
There we go.
My name is Karen Thomas. I've lived in Bandon for 14 plus years. I've been privileged to be on the Bandon Library Advisory Board and the BLFF board for the last 10 years. My approach is a much more emotional one than you statistically minded people's, perhaps. But the current issue is not a competition between Bandon and Coquille. It's based on real numbers that have been exhaustively worked over for at least the last 14 months that I know of personally. It's a many years long attempt to finally bring fairness within the overall financial pie of the county to libraries in general. And Bandon Library has been on the short end of the stick for 40 years. Particularly since the new library was built without public funds, by the way. The pie is seriously out of balance as it stands, and it has been for the last 20 years that I personally know about. Our directors have worked hard to do the impossible for all of those years by squeezing every penny, and with the help of our great but aging BLFF, who does a lot of the funding, to keep the doors open with minimal staff and without not being able to buy books without the contributions from the charitable side of the organization. The pandemic was really the last straw as far as the Bandon Library was concerned. When we were finally able to reopen, it's been for only 27 hours a week, consistently since the pandemic. And that's with the director filling in most days to cover the desk for lunch breaks, sick and vacation days, and many countless weekends. This past year, while other libraries in the county have been building gold-plated new facilities and planning expensive events, Bandon was forced to beg its patrons for donations to cover the utility costs to keep the doors and the lights open. We've waited 20 years for a fair and equitable allocation of the overall funding. Even if this is passed as it stands, for the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel. And there are no other options. And this is in a community whose traffic exceeds all of the other libraries except for North Bend and Coos Bay. And that's with 27 hours a week. Please pass this allocation. We're out of options.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Carl Berry. After Carl is going to be Kay Marino, if Kay is here. Okay.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Carl Berry from Bandon, and in view of your comment, I'll just say I support Directors Kingsbury and Lagasse. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question I was going to ask, but what are the open hours, the time slot?
I couldn't reel them off at the head, but I'm sure Christine can.
Yeah,
Okay.
Christine can answer that.
Since you have short hours, maybe people want to know that listen and,
Right, right. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're open noon to 6.
Okay.
And then Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 10 to 1.
cool, thank you.
All right, Joe Kuhner. Darlene Hetty is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Hitchcock. Dennis
There
is
he is,
here.
yeah.
After Dennis is going to be Barbara Coffey. I'm sorry, I can't read.
Barbara.
Is Barbara here?
Yeah, she's here.
Yeah, okay.
Good morning, or good afternoon, is it?
Morning.
It's still morning.
Yeah.
Name is Dennis Hitchcock, and I am a resident in Bandon, and I'm also a board member for the Bandon Library Friends and Foundation. I really think that small town libraries are a key part of what has made America great. Where I grew up in Fairfield, Montana, our library was literally a falling down log cabin. You know, when I started using the Bandon Library 38 years ago, it was in a room that was an adjunct on City Hall, which was a step up from a log cabin, but not exactly a fantastic library. You know, which, and so over the years, you know, I participated in fundraising for the current library. But it brings me to consideration of you know, the allocation today. You know, this has clearly been a very, very difficult process. It's a literally a give and take kind of situation when you're cutting up one pie and you're just changing it around. It's sort of the classic definition of you know, when a settlement is reached, it's kind of the classic definition, which almost everybody has gotten something they didn't want. You know, not everybody, not anybody really is getting everything that they want out of these negotiations. The Bandon Library and Friends, they want to support the library. When I started volunteering there, we were buying books, we were doing supporting activities, these kinds of things. As was briefly mentioned, last year we contributed $13,000 to the library, not for resources, but just literally to keep the door open and to keep the lights on. But you know, that's just not sustainable. What's the point of having the doors open and the lights on if there's no staff, there's no materials, hours are being cut? You know, it's a cycle that will just go down and down. It really is time to adjust the allocation. It's absolutely critical that all of you understand that. And I understand that a work session is not necessarily putting off the decision, because it's obvious by the attendance here today that all of the communities that have public libraries in this county are not going to allow you to put off a decision. So please, yes, totally understand the process. And it is time for an adjustment of the tax allocation. And you're going to have to make that decision ultimately. But I think it's time for all of the Coos County libraries to be made great again. And I advocate for the reallocation of funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, Barbara, did you want to come again? And then is Teresa something Cass ends in? Oh, yes, okay, it is Lucas. Okay, thank you, Teresa.
I just wanted to briefly address the comments earlier about public meetings, to point out that the Coos Library Board are public meetings. They are posted. And it's been, the formula's been on the agendas for years, for a very long time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Teresa, yeah.
My name is Teresa Lucas, and I'm the Library Director of the Coquille Public Library. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. On behalf of the Coquille Public Library and the City of Coquille, I ask that a pause be placed on the implementation of the new distribution formula. A pause that will be used to obtain a library consultant, one who does this type of financial planning for libraries in the state of Oregon. As presented, Coquille is facing a 26% decrease in our budget, or $100,000. The letter from Mayor Sam to you explained the proposed implementation schedule. I recently spoke with a staff member of the Oregon State Library. They have heard rumor of the Coos libraries working on a new funding formula, but they have not been contacted for assistance with the process. The state library does not govern the libraries in our state, but it does hold a wealth of knowledge and resources. Not contacting the state library for advice is the first indication that the process thus far has not been completely objective. A formula based largely on usage will benefit libraries with more staff and more resources that feed the statistical facets in the proposed formula. Whereas, in a very short time, those same usage facets will cripple the smaller libraries. A 26% reduction in revenue for Coquille will result in the loss of one full-time staff member, reduced book budget, and reduced or eliminated eliminated program budget. Losing one staff member will mean less open hours, resulting in less foot traffic. Fewer new books means less circulation. And what about programming in our new building? I'm sure you've seen the progress being made to renovate the old Banner Bank building. We raised enough money in the summer of '22 to purchase an elevator, making the second floor ADA compliant for library programs. Since that date, we've raised an additional $500,000 in grants and donations for the new building. People understand the value and impact of our library in the community. Coquille has developed some amazing programs over the past few years, and it would be a shame to take that away from our patrons. A funding formula based primarily on usage will be devastating for smaller libraries. The state library does not recommend usage statistics be used in funding formulas. For a system like ours, they suggest a formula with a base allotment for each library to fund the fixed costs of basic operations and personnel, with the remaining funds distributed based on a population scheme. There are at least 3 library consultants in Oregon who specialize in helping libraries revise their funding formulas. The current formula was developed in 1992, and we all agree it needs to be revisited, but we humbly ask that you reject the new proposal before you and allow time to seek outside guidance from our peers who are experienced in the process. Not to make light of the many hours spent by the distribution committee thus far, but too much is at stake to adopt this formula that has not been examined by our peers. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Mayor Flaherty?
I just wanted to thank you for your decision for the work session.
Okay, good enough. Thank you, Mayor. Arliss? Yes, that.
I'm Arliss Phones from Coquille.
Good morning.
I grew up here. My name was Arliss George way back when. You may even have known my father. I've been a librarian for 35 years. And I retired from Multnomah County Library in Portland. I know a good library when I see one, and Coquille has a good public library and good staff, competent and hard workers. And I'm asking that you take seriously the librarian's recommendations and act on them, because I think that will help all of us. It would be a tragedy, just as we're moving to a library that has a meeting room, to have to lose some of our staff. So I thank you for your work session, and you're going the right direction. I want to say one other thing. I approve of your salaries. I am a retiree, and I make almost that much money as a retiree. And you guys are working hard, and you deserve your salaries. Thank you.
I have Tim Pierce, I know, left. Sharon Waterman, Charlie. How about Bob Pickel? No, Bob's not here. Lorna Schilling.
I'm Lorna Schilling, and I graduated from Multnomah County Library a few years ago and moved back here to the family farm. And I just wanted to say that the idea of changing the funding model is good and sounds like long overdue, and I would like to see it done equitably. And usage statistics are tricky. It sounds like they're talking about changing things every year, and so like Coquille could lose, a fourth of their budget, and then the new library gets opened, and do they get it back because there's more usage all of a sudden? And it's so volatile that I would really like you to consider another method, and based on more like at least a base income, base budget for each library, and then maybe some smaller changes, because
Yeah,
it's
I'm
kinda
going to
crazy.
interrupt your time for just
Yeah.
a moment. I've stopped, but that was a question that came up in my mind when I heard the annual adjustment. Is I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to budget for those changes. That seems like a little bit of a problematic element of the plan.
Yeah, I
So,
appreciate, Bob,
well-
your questions about the door count too.
Yeah.
And whether there's a meeting room or not a meeting room, Coquille will have a meeting room. So I would hope that the statistics go up, but in the meantime, you fired somebody.
Yeah,
Right.
like Commissioner Taylor said, you're gonna have these ups and downs, and I
Yeah.
wonder, now, we do a 5-year rolling average on receipts for the county forest.
Mhm.
So that we don't have this great big income one year, and then the market goes to nothing. I've been here long enough, we didn't sell any timber one year, because we'd have given it away.
Oh,
There was no sense giving timber away, we knew the market would come back, so it smooths out the whole system. Might be worth considering something like 5-year rolling average, or something like that, for
yeah.
all of the usage.
I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, and that Bandon has been hurting.
Of course, we have to see how the stats come out, of course, but.
Yeah.
Now, another question, if a library has, let's say Dora Library has a program for their school kids,
Oh, yeah. Do they count that?
do they count it?
I don't know.
They count them, but it's not included in the statistics because it's outside of the building.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're counting, like, the soft use, like, I check out a lot of books on my phone.
Oh.
And.
Really?
So.
They have that
then
feature, I don't know.
get counted in, in those,
Uh-huh.
the physical book statistics.
Oh,
It'll be very interesting to have enlightenment shed on all of these questions during the work
Yeah.
session, so.
Yeah,
That'll
thank
be
you.
very helpful. Thank you very
Interesting.
much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chris, I got an online first. We've got Rob. Can we unmute Rob, please?
Can you all hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Rob.
All right, as a taxpayer, Rob Taylor from Bandon. I live in Bandon, Oregon, and I'll tell you what, I haven't used the Bandon Library in a long time. I haven't used most of the libraries. The only time I've gone to them is when I've gone to a meeting that was being held for other purposes. And, you know, I've been watching the library services grow and grow and grow, and they're starting to become more of a homeless facility for people who are on the streets. Many of them who aren't even really homeless, they're just drug derelicts. The last time I went to the Coos Bay Library, there was a guy bathing in the sink. I thought it was disgusting. I wouldn't want my children there. So as a taxpayer, I don't care how they do the funding. I want to get rid of paying taxes for the library. Not that I'm opposed to libraries. I'm just tired of paying for it. And I'm tired of people always bringing up the word community, like all of us are in this community that they've created and somehow get a benefit from it. Not all of us get a benefit from it. In fact, let me tell you, when I do my petitions, I think as a taxpayer who pays for those facilities, I should be allowed to stand up at the library entrance and gather petitions. But the Bandon Library, they were so rude and insulting. The staff was just absolutely rude, came out and kicked me off the sidewalk. You know what? If I'm not going to be allowed to come up there and get petitions, and there's a difference between petitioning and soliciting. I'm not selling nothing. I'm petitioning for a benefit of the community, their community, whatever they want to call it. So I'm one of those who, I don't care how you do the formula. I want to get rid of the taxing districts and let these people who want the library to pay for the library. I'm out. I wish I could pull out. And I'm tired of being forced to pay for this garbage. That's just my opinion.
All right, thank you, Rob. Okay, we have Chris is next up on the list.
In the interest of budgeting my time, by the way, I'm Chris Castleman. I'll just say that I love libraries, and that's all. I'll talk about that. I had a question that needed answered. So last week, you went through all the budgets, and at the end of the 3 days, you roughly said that the budget was balanced based on the tentative approval of the status quo budget from each department. Is that correct? Each department, you guys tentatively approved the status quo, not the 15% cut budget?
That is correct. It was a tentative approval. And yes, that was based on status quo, which will remain viable with passage of the public safety levy.
Right, assuming the passage of the
Correct.
public safety levy, status quo budgets were tentatively approved for
Yeah.
each department. There was one department that presented 3 budgets. That was the jail department within the sheriff's office. They presented a status quo budget, a 15% budget, and then a with levy budget. Which one of those 3 was approved?
The levy.
The third one.
Everything was levied. Everything passed.
Sure, but there was 3 specific budgets that they presented: a status quo, a 15% cut, and it said with levy, and it was a $1.7 million increase in that budget.
Right. My understanding of the reason for that was, and I'll pause the clock while I'm responding to that, was that since the public safety levy directly channels funds to the sheriff's department or to the jail for its operation, then that creates a different fiscal scenario than than the regular status quo would without the levy. I think that's the right explanation. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Another pod.
Oh, that's right. The levy added another pod, so that's why there was added a third pod.
Could I, at the end of the third day, Megan, you did the calculation and said that we were about $104,000 under. Did that calculation include the status quo budget from the jail, the 15% cut budget from the jail, or the with levy option? Okay, thank you. The second thing I wanted to address, it's been repeatedly said by John, Bob mentioned it today, that we are the second lowest tax-paying county in the state. John and I reviewed his notes where he came up with that number. He's referring to something called the permanent rate. It is the base rate that we all pay in our property taxes. It is not the full rate that we actually see when we pay our bill. Based on John's own notes, we are actually third from the lowest. Splitting hairs, but
I was not talking about the permanent rate. Our permanent rate is the third lowest, but our total tax rate is the second.
So I'd like to see that information, because when I looked on the Oregon State Department of Revenue, I found an analysis of more of a realistic version of what we actually pay, an average tax rate of what we pay at the end of our bill. You know, that includes local option levies, the library, urban renewal, things like that, and we were 10th. We were 10th out of 36 from the lowest. It was an average of $13.23 per 1,000 assessed value.
That would include all $13 plus would include the taxes for all taxing districts, Chris. When I'm just talking about what the county itself charges. What Coos County charges as opposed to Curry County, as opposed to Josephine, is supposedly not what the schools get, not what the cities get, not what the ports get. You would have to have had included all of those to get to the $13. And that's consistent with here in the county. We probably have an average property tax rate of $12 to $13.
Sure.
But the county.
John, you and I know that I'm looking at your notes. We talked about this. I have John's notes, and there are 2 counties that are lower than ours. So it's close. But I keep hearing the second from the lowest number, and it's not accurate. But we can agree to disagree. Math is hard. The last thing I wanted to talk about is there's 2 scenarios, with the levy passing and without the levy passing. And I'm going to read from the ballot title summary. It says, these funds will be restricted for use by Coos County Jail and the Prosecution Division of the Coos County District Attorney's Office. There's only 2 things that it can be used for, the jail and the Prosecution Division of the Coos County District Attorney's Office. Based on the 2 proposed scenarios, I understand you guys you budgeted for the levy passing. That scenario looks, if you even called it the status quo, the county continues to be funded pretty much like it is now. There are slight increases. The jail, as she mentioned, goes up to 3 pods. Unfortunately, the DA actually loses a deputy DA based on what they were budgeted last year. It's in the letter that the DA wrote to you guys. You can read it. He read it during Monday's hearing. But anyways, that scenario with the levy passing is mostly status quo. The levy not passing, I read it earlier, but the effects are devastating to every department in the county without it passing. So the question I have for you is, and I can read them again, the treasurer loses, the legal department loses, surveyor, the criminal department at the jail, the clerk's office. All these departments have massive cutbacks, IT as well. If the levy doesn't pass, but the levy's only supposed to be used for the jail and for the criminal department with the DA, how does it affect the other county offices? How does it affect the other departments? You're saying it's only given to the jail, and the DA's office. But if it doesn't pass, magically, all these other departments don't have money? Well, why is the inverse true, that if it passes, they magically do have all this money?
Well, clearly, there is going to be a reduction in the overall revenues. I mean, the overall funding available for every department. If the public safety levy passes, that relieves general fund pressure on the other departments and facilitates the opening of the third jail pod. So if you would prefer to see a scenario where, with failure of the levy, all of the cuts take place in the sheriff's office and the jail and the district attorney's office, then I would suggest that would be an erroneous way to look at it.
I would prefer it be labeled what it is. It's a general fund levy. The levy in existence would fund all these departments in the general fund. And then if you wanted to pass another levy for public safety to improve public safety, not just keep it at the status quo, you can do that. I mean, honestly, you should have passed 2 levies, or proposed 2 levies. $5 million for the general fund to fix your deficit. That would account for all the department's deficits. And then an additional levy, $5 million or whatever you need, to increase law enforcement presence and bolster it. Fix the jail, fix the DA's office. That's what you should have done. You're playing a shell game. I understand the position you're in. Would people vote for a clerk's office levy? Probably not. Would they vote for a IT department levy? Probably not. So it's easiest to ask them for public safety levy. It pulls at their heartstrings. People don't want to see crime running rampant in this county. I get it. I get what you're doing, and that's why I'm here kind of putting it out there that I'm not the only one that's noticing. It's a shell game you're playing. You're taking the public safety funds, you're giving it to public safety legally, but you're offsetting the cuts that would happen across the county. So it's actually a general fund deficit levy, but you guys can call it what you will.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment today? Yes, sir. First hand up. We'll get you second, David.
Robert Moore from Coos Bay. I'll say by way of my qualifications to speak on this subject that I was trustee on the board of Coos Bay's library for 2 terms, which you get termed out at that point. I also was the chair of that board, and also served for over 20 years on the Coos Bay Public Library Foundation, which I've also retired from. I'm not speaking on behalf of them, I'm speaking as a private citizen. And I'd like to present to you a different description of what a library is. First of all, a library is a public building, and contrary to what Mr. Rob Taylor said, a public building means it's open to the entire community, a word that he apparently doesn't like, but that is in fact the reality. It's open to everyone, regardless of who they are, what their economic background is, whether you like them or you don't like them, it's a public building. Same as this is a public building. Nobody's denied entrance to it. And the reality is that libraries today are community centers. So when you talk about a meeting room that's part of a library as if it wasn't producing a library service by having anyone meet in it, that's an awkward way to look at it. That's not a reality. I don't care who sits in the meeting room of the Coos Bay Public Library. They are using a library facility that we have to pay for. It's part of the library. It's not separate from. And I can tell you that the Coos Bay Library, and keep in mind that the Coos Bay Public Library is the largest library on the Oregon coast. It's the largest library by square footage. It's the largest library by collection. It's the largest library by users. Currently, just the contracted services that the library has to have to do things like clean the meeting rooms and keep them maintained is gonna run about $90,000 this year. That's a substantial chunk of change. And to think that those meeting rooms are now somehow not part of the library unless they're doing an actual library program, no, that's not the case. We've had, at the Coos Bay Public Library, we've had job fairs in that meeting room. It's not a library operation, but it's certainly a major benefit to the community. And it's something that takes place in the library. The library runs thousands of programs in a year. Thousands, at least 1,000. I said thousands, I meant 1,000. So I'm hoping I'm clearing up a misconception about library space and why those meeting rooms are important. And you just heard from the folks in Coquille that are looking forward to having meeting rooms in their library. And there was a mistaken comment made, I'm not sure who made it, that if Dora held a meeting for school children and it wasn't in their building, they couldn't count that. That's not true. They get to count those people because it's a library service that was provided. So I really appreciate that you're going to do a work session. It's obvious that there's a lot more education that needs to happen. And regarding the annual changes in the formula, there's no change in the formula. It's an updating of the statistics. All of the statistics that are used to create the allocation will be updated annually, and they will use those 3-year sets that are backdated so that they have time to adjust for those. They will use those, but those 3-year sets will move forward every year. And so your statistics will be updated. The changes are going to be minor unless there's a radical change. For example, Coquille, having a new building, could see a radical boost in their allocation, based on the new statistics that they have. But overall, the changes tend to be very minor. The reason that they're dramatic this year is it's the first time you've done it in over 40 years. And I've been watching this whole process for 20 years of trying to get this formula reallocated and brought up to date. And it's time to move forward with it. I really object to the idea of voting this formula down and sending it back to work. Let's get it solved in the work session.
Yes. Thank you.
Hello again, commissioners, I guess. Well, it's still a few minutes before noon, so I guess we're still morning. I'm sorry to drag this on, but I think some of the comments that were made on behalf of Bandon painted at best a rather incomplete picture. One of the first things I want to say is that I'm on the Coquille City Budget Committee. Obviously, I'm not speaking for the city of Coquille. And as you know, I attend a lot of budget meetings here, so I try to get to an understanding of budget. Now, I hear Bandon repeatedly saying that they are actually receiving less money than Coquille. I'd be open to looking to data, but I've looked at both the information that the city of Bandon posts on its website on budgeting, and then, of course, what Coquille posts. And really, it seems to me that they both have about the same amount of money, but that actually I've seen some figures that would show that Bandon has more. Now, I know budgeting is not as precise as it seems to some people, so certainly that could be wrong, but my understanding is the amount's about equal. Now, in terms of Bandon's situation, that they say they're in very dire straits, they actually have more staff than Coquille does. It's not a real major difference, but my understanding, Well, according to what is in the budget material for the city of Bandon, you have 5 staff members. Or they have 5 staff members, I'm trying to address you. City of Coquille has 4.5, roughly equal. Bandon is only open with some variances, 20-some hours a week. Coquille is open 40, 45 hours a week. The other thing that I guess is really cuts to the heart of this in terms of the statistics, what makes this kind of plan really insidious is any sort of discrepancies between the libraries based on these stats is real likely to cause further budget cuts in a library that's simply unable to function. We're going to be moving into I shouldn't say we, I'm not part of the library effort, I'm a friend of the library. Coquille is going to open a new facility that's a little larger, more complicated and harder to staff. If Coquille gets cut by 26%, at some point it's going to have to lay off at least 1 staff member. How this is going to work with all these stats at the point that a library gets cut and it can't offer the hours it did, can't buy the material it did, the stats that basically decide funding are going to be negative then. Now this is supposed to be a 3-year rolling average, but even if Coquille outperformed every other library, their funding would not get to anywhere near the status quo probably until about 2028. In reality, in this situation, it's real likely that the Coquille statistics, that power funding, would drop. Then what would happen is, of course, they would have to make further cutbacks and there'd be a decrease. So what basically this plan does, it sets up winter libraries and loser libraries. And the gap between them is very, very likely to grow through the years. And it would be a total disaster for Coquille. We have worked for decades to try to open a new library. And when we're about to do it, we're going to have the rug pulled out from under us. Now, to give one analogy about how this would work, I kind of hate to use this and I seldom do, but let me use a sports analogy. Assuming the NFL had a team that was excellent, went to the Super Bowl and won, and their metrics, offense, defense, you name it, whatever they were excellent. And those things determine what kind of compensation and other benefits that team would have. So if the NFL said, well, you won the Super Bowl, your stats, your metrics are great, we're going to give you the top draft choice in the league, and we're going to raise your salary cap in return. And then there's some team that say 2-3 win team, and their metrics don't look good on any particular spectrum, offense, defense, special teams. And they said, well, your stats, your metrics are not good. So we're going to take your first round draft pick, and we're going to basically cut your salary cap down. That would make it harder to recruit. Well, obviously, it's highly unlikely that that team would be able to be competitive in the NFL. And if those sort of statistics were the basis for future competition, it's likely there'd just be more and more mediocrity from the lower division. So this is an extremely important decision. And the essence of what this new formula is to create losers and winners. And this district was put together cooperatively so that all people at all libraries, at all parts of the county, had adequate funding to get the services they need. Now, if that's impossible anymore, then I guess we need to have a conversation about that. But don't bring up a formula and say, oh, well, this is just a great formula, we should implement it. When I think if you look at it closely, it'll have disastrous consequences for some libraries, and it'll be a major boost for others. There's no doubt about it. Bandon does a very good job with their library. We have not done as well here, but we think we can. Don't stifle our chance to do this. This is too important to do it, and I realize this is a very tiring, contentious subject, but let's get it right. When people say move forward, the status quo should not be changed unless somebody can make a convincing case that there's more benefit from the change. I don't think there is. And I also need to remind you that at no point was there actually anyone from Coquille on the Coos Library Board that put this particular formula together. And as our library has mentioned, it really ignores a lot of the basic standards in the library field, and it was done without consulting with people that are familiar with these standards, especially the Oregon State Library. So let's think very, very carefully about that. And let's try to get it right the first time, and if we can't, delay it for another year or another 6 months or 3 months. Get some sort of a process where you get expertise that's needed, which I don't think you have now. But don't try to game the system where you create a set of winners and losers. That totally violates the whole purpose of the district. Anyway, thank you for time. I know it's been a long meeting. Now it is afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How in the
Thank
name
you,
of
David.
heaven did you talk the board of commissioners into being the rule, the decider on this?
All right, is
I'm
there
sorry.
anyone else that wishes
Sean
to,
wants to talk.
please?
Well, good afternoon, commissioners
Good afternoon.
and all. I live in Coquille. My name is Sean Jennings. I am on the Coquille Library Board, but speak today as a private citizen. Just for your information, I was chair for 7 years of the CLB County Board, and which is an advisory board, of course, to you as the governors. And this proposed formula, I feel, divides libraries, as my husband said, into winners and losers. Over 3 years, it will cut Coquille Library funding by 26%. Bandon's Library, on the other hand, will get a 27% increase. I also want to tell you that we're doing a great job putting our new library together. It's our librarian alone has raised $700,000 with grants, foundations, etc. And I am on the Coquille Library Board and have been in and out for quite a long time. Chair of the Friends. I've been involved with a lot of volunteering as well. So I find that I feel Coquille has been treated shabbily in this instance. The proposed cuts will force our library to lay off staff, which are valuable. We've got a great staff, and reduce hours, which, as you notice, are quite a lot more than Bandon's with their huge library. And by the way, it's the library we have right now is the 1942 model, which burned down and then was built exactly in the same way in the 50s. Let's see. The proposed cuts will force Coquille Library to lay off staff and generate sort of a spiral downward, the way I'm looking at it. Because once you start that, then you give less service, you're open less hours, patrons may or may not get there. There was no one from Coquille on this library board. I did that for a while when I was on that committee, or board. I think the small libraries were not well represented, obviously. But there were 2 people, I think, that were linked to Bandon as well. The Coos County Board repeatedly rejected adding elements to the formula that favored Coquille, which our librarian suggested and searched for. 3 elements, okay. These elements included hours open and to the public and programming. I don't know why that's not important. I think it is pretty important how often you're there and how reliable you are. The Library Service District was founded as a collaborative enterprise to provide countywide library service for all residents and adequately funded libraries in our district. I think it's important to note that all these people, whether they're in the cities or the big cities, bigger cities, or in the country, all pay the same amount of taxes for this particular service, which, again, I'd love to say is the best in the state, and maybe in several other states. I remember Congressman DeFazio asking me, why can't they do that in Lane County? They finally did, but it took them, 10, 15 more years to get it together. Anyway, so thank you very much for putting up with these hopefully last words of this meeting, and I hope you'll really consider changing this so it's equitable. That's the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. All right. Anybody else who was not on the list cares to comment? Seeing none, thank you all for being here. We are adjourned.